Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish. I am thrilled to welcome our extraordinary guest, Michelle Fruhschien. Michelle is a mom, special educator, advocate, and blogger. Her family is very unique, as many of her family members are impacted by rare diseases. Michelle's daughter, Haley, was born during the onset of COVID-19 and, unbeknownst to her, has a rare genetic condition known as Jordan syndrome. Through hope and laughter, Michelle and her family persist in advocating for individuals with disabilities. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to finally get to chat with you.
Yes, this is one that we're very much looking forward to and can't wait to be able to visit with you. First off, congratulations on the great impact and success that you're having for your community and the disability community at large. You really are a great influence for our community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's all of us, really. It's just one big community, and it's amazing to know that you're not alone and you have so many people that you can always reach out to. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, most definitely. So one thing that I'd like to start with is just talking a little bit about Jordan syndrome. This is not a common disability. This is one that my guess is many of our listeners are not familiar with. Could you share about what Jordan syndrome is?
Absolutely. So, like probably many of the listeners, they probably never heard of it, just like we did when our daughter was diagnosed. It's an ultra rare genetic genetic disorder that affects every individual who has it pretty differently, but there's a lot of common threads such as hypotonia or low muscle tone, just global developmental delays, speech delays. Some children, some adolescents, some adults talk, some don't at different stages. Seizure disorder does impact part of the population. There's some visual issues that also kind of range depending on the individual. But, we're in a really awesome time where science is progressing and so is social media. So there's a lot more awareness and a lot more research that's happening. And we're really hopeful as we're gearing up and getting ready for clinical trials. So I'm excited to see kind of the trajectory of, Jordan syndrome and what happens next.
Yeah. So, Michelle, I think most families, almost every family I've ever visited with that enter into this disability journey really find their own way of being able to, in essence, lift where they stand. And you are one that just seems to really have embraced and grasped a deep understanding of the actual technical side of this particular syndrome. And so is that something that's in your background, that you have a research background, or maybe share with us how you got to where, you really are well-versed in this space?
No background. I am the least science, medical, anything guru. My father, he passed away last summer, but he was a neurologist. So I think that just like learning through him and, through like his medical background, I just feel like I kind of dove right into it. And my husband's a nurse practitioner. So I just feel like the medical world was always surrounding me. But I'm a special ed teacher. So like I can't touch any of that. But I just feel like when you have a child that's impacted by something so rare, you become like the researcher and you want to figure out whatever you can. So I think that, zero background, but I think like many parents, we just kind of become the experts.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So Haley's almost 5, or she's nearing 5 years old. How long have you been a special ed teacher?
So I always say the world works in such mysterious ways. I was an English teacher when I first started in education. And when I was pregnant with Haley, which was right before COVID, I said, I think I need a change. I had completed my master's in special education, but I hadn't put it into use yet. And, I mentioned it to my school that I'm ready for a change and a challenge. And the year Haley was born was also when I started in special ed. So I've been a special ed teacher for as long as Haley has been around. So kind of crazy that those two things coincide, and I think has helped me become a better mother to a child with disabilities and a better teacher to students with different learning abilities.
It's unique, but, so you have the same amount of time as a special ed teacher as you do with Haley as your daughter. Mm-hmm. But it's not like you just overnight went and got your master's degree.
Right.
Really, what was it that spurred you towards that? Was it just a feeling in your heart, or was there other outside influences that motivated you to explore that?
I think just teaching and seeing that everyone was learning differently in an inclusive classroom, I think that was a huge factor. But then I always feel like there's a reason for everything, and there must have been something within me that was kind of pushing me towards it. I mean, maybe I had a feeling that, it would be something that would be a passion in both my personal and, professional life.
Yeah. So talk to us about Haley's diagnosis. When was that?
So Haley was actually diagnosed at 3 months old. Let me backtrack. She was misdiagnosed. So I kind of dove into a different diagnosis at 3 months, and I joined all the Facebook groups, and I was an expert in achondroplasia or dwarfism. But as I dove deeper into that diagnosis, I realized Haley just didn't fit that. And got other opinions after we were told that she actually did not have achondroplasia. And fast forwarding to about 8 months, we were really, really lucky and fortunate to meet a neurologist who just happened to order the right testing. We didn't even do genomic sequencing, which a lot of people do have to complete to get a diagnosis, but she just did extra blood work and put in macrocephaly, which looks for, different disorders that kind of are picked up by a larger head. And I was blown away by the fact that, it was picked up, and we were very lucky to have such a rare diagnosis with such a young age.
Was that difficult for you to go, I mean, there's a natural grieving process and an acceptance and things that just really have to transpire with a diagnosis. And so you receive a misdiagnosis, but your heart is leaning into everything with this particular diagnosis. Was that difficult? Was that how was that to receive that diagnosis only to find out that that was not correct?
I think I put my heart into it for a month, and I feel like for that entire month, I was like, okay, well, this is what her life may look like. And this is the trajectory of, what we may need to do to our home, and, just trying to look at different resources. And I think that I connected with a lot of people within that community. And then it was like, okay, just kidding. You're starting over. So it was really hard just because I accepted that, she wasn't typical and she was going to have challenges. But then to say, actually, we don't know what she has, I think was just, it was gut wrenching because I felt back to square one and, left in the dark with zero answers at that time.
So you've got one older son, Noah, and then there's you and Andrew, your husband. What was this like for Andrew as he was going through this and being a part of this, obviously a very active part?
So he is amazing. I just want to start off by saying that because he was my rock. I am very emotional, and my head goes to one place and his head goes to the other. He kind of goes into action. He's like, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to figure out what next steps are, where I'm in my own head and I'm still trying to navigate all the feelings. So I feel like we balance each other really, really well. And at that time, it wasn't like we could get into a doctor's appointment very easily because it was COVID. And it was just a really, really crazy, isolating time. We didn't have family that really could help us so much either because we were all kind of like, what is COVID?
Yeah.
And what does this mean? And it feels very far away. I think about that time, but, I'm really thankful for my husband being such a rock during that period.
Yeah, well, it's with COVID, that was a scare for all of us. But then for
Right.
you as a new mom, welcoming a child that has differing needs, and you don't know what this could be and how that could potentially impact your daughter. What a scary time.
Yes, for sure.
But we're on the other side of it, and there's a lot of brightness that's happening right now. Talk to us about this work. So I love your Instagram handle and your website. So Mama Bear for Rare. Great name, by the way. So at Mama Bear for Rare. Tell us more about the work that you're doing with Mama Bear for Rare.
So I actually want to backpedal a little bit because Mama Bear for Rare kind of started because, and I feel like it's really important for other parents to know that it's okay to be in a weird spot when you get a diagnosis or whatever it may be. And it's okay to have the feelings you're feeling. And I would be lying if I said I was just like, you know what, I'm going to start social media and I'm just going to dive right into it and connect. I was a mess. And there were nights I cried myself to sleep. And, I didn't know what to do or how to navigate it. But one night, as I was crying myself to sleep, I was like, I need to do something with this. And I had a coworker who actually left the teaching profession, and she now creates websites. And this idea was born, and I was like, I'm going to start a blog, and she's going to make my website. And it just kind of happened that way. And then the next day I was like, I'm like a mama bear now, mama bear for rare. And it just like happened. And I think that's when the best things happen, is when you're just like not expecting it. But yeah, I mean, it started off selfishly for me to really get my emotions out and to navigate it. And then when I started connecting with other moms and dads and caregivers, and it wasn't just people with, Jordan syndrome or following the same journey we were, but, across the globe, we were talking to people that had different diagnoses, but similar feelings. It became something that felt like this is what I was meant to do, and I was drawn to it. And I still love getting a message from someone that's like, wow, I saw that your child has Jordan's. My child was just diagnosed. Like, what can you tell me? And I'm by no means an expert at all, but what I can do is share my experience and hope that it helps somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. I see that as, I know for me, so we started Rod's Heroes when Nash, let's see, he would have been 4, right around 4 is when that inspiration came. And for me, Andrea, in fact, was a lot like Andrew, very much a rock and very stalwart and just really leaned into it. And for me, it was a grieving process. And I too was a mess. I had a hard time even talking about it without becoming very emotional. And it wasn't an emotion of sadness in the sense of like tragedy, but it definitely was a very raw emotion. And I know that for me, starting Rod's Heroes when Nash was 4 was really a way also to be able to like serve that pain inside, and a way to be able to process some of those feelings that I had been feeling. Sounds like that was a similar thing for you.
Yeah, I think that that's what's so impactful, is that like I can connect to exactly what you just said, and I couldn't have articulated those words better than you did, and that's exactly how I was feeling. It wasn't tragedy, but it was something different, and trying to find a way to kind of get that out in the world and not just feeling so trapped with those feelings, I think is just so powerful, because those kinds of moments and those things and experiences help us create things that are bigger than us. And I don't know, I think it changes the world at the end of the day, because other people see what you're doing and they're like, all right, I can get through this and I can do it too.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of that concept of the 4-minute mile. Once somebody breaks the 4-minute mile mark, it changes the paradigm on now this is possible. And we have such amazing advocates out there that are breaking that paradigm and showing that, yes, this is not just possible, but this can be something that could be turned into something very, very positive.
Absolutely.
So great job on that. Very good job. Let's talk about Haley. How is Haley doing?
She is feisty. I am learning more about her and her sassy, spicy personality. We're so lucky and fortunate that she's in like this amazing school, and she just has people that like teach her and work with her, but they love her. And they're currently working on piloting different AAC communication for her, whatever works. But eye gaze seems to be her thing, and she tells it like it is. In school, she tells the teacher when she finds something boring, or a student put their hands on her wheelchair tray and she said, let go. And I'm like, good for you, girl. Like, you tell them. And I'm just so proud of her, because and I just watched Out of My Mind. I don't know if you saw it
I
yet.
have not seen that yet. I want to, though.
Get the tissues, cue the tears. It's so good, but I feel like it also empowered me more to really understand more even about my child, just because, our kids communicate in different ways, and Haley's non-speaking at the moment, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have anything to say. And I think that seeing how she communicates in different ways has made me just so much more in tune with like everything, and not just Haley, but everything. So sorry, that was very off topic because you asked about Haley, but she's just, I always say like you try to teach your kids about the world, but they're really teaching you things that you never thought about. And Haley and Noah have pushed me to a place that I never thought I would be in. I think I'm the strongest version of myself that I ever have been. And I know that there will be times where I'm going to have to be even stronger, but I'm proud of myself, because there's times where I was like, I can't get through this, or I don't want to, like, I don't feel like I can. And then you just do it. And I thank my kids for that, really, because they push me to, everything to greater heights.
I have to say, in preparing for this podcast and going through some of the content that you've created, and then obviously the questions that you had answered, you are a very strong person. You have a very special confidence about you, a very likable confidence about you. And so it is interesting and I guess comforting in a way to be able to hear you talk about how this was for you in the beginning, because I just wouldn't see that. Like, I wouldn't guess that, having got to know you right now, that was a very challenging time for you. If I had to guess, I based on you, I would have said that Andrew was probably the one that was struggling in the beginning. But now I'm excited to be able to meet him at some point in time as well, because that's a pretty remarkable thing. But hats off to you. You definitely come and portray a very strong confidence in going down this journey and this path, and hence why I think you are such a great advocate for your daughter.
Thank you.
I will say, is she getting that from you then, or is she getting that from Andrew when she's sharing to the boy, please don't touch my chair?
I would say probably me. So, oops. No one
There's
else to
nothing
blame
wrong with
here.
that. Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. I feel so thankful to live in a time when disabilities are becoming more accepted, that the light that exists within our children and our loved ones is being not just accepted, but promoted and given the stage that it deserves to be able to have the impact that it can have. But man, there is so much work to be able to be done still, to be able to truly maximize this special gift that we have. In your mind, where do you see areas of most improvement or the best opportunities to make a difference?
I think that I just look at our society and I think that, yes, it does feel that, there's been great strides in education and just society as a whole. But I do feel like there's almost this like taboo, like no one really wants to talk about it, or I think inclusion exists, but it's like, you're including, but until you're actually like engaging and really really including, I think that that's where there's like this line that's kind of drawn. Like, I think that there's a lot of people in my life who are so amazing and they've really been such a community for us. But I think that there's also people that kind of exist that don't really know how to engage with Haley. And I'm not blaming them. I just think that we have a lot of work to do. And I think that really starts when our kids are little, when they're young, and teaching them that there are differences and, it's okay. Because I think that when they know that and when it's just part of growing up, I think that they're less scared to ask questions or to engage. And I'm all about ask anything you want, as long as they're kind, questions. And, we did encounter, something with my son. There was a child who was asking questions about Haley. And, I said, it's okay if people have questions. He said, well, there's a difference between kind and unkind questions. And without going into specifics, it wasn't a good situation, but it was really a learning situation for my son where he realized that there are going to be times where, we don't have friends who know Haley and, know our story. And it's not his job to explain it, but he just has to learn how to navigate, some people in our society. And I would love to sit here and say that one day I want the whole world to be accepting and loving and just, know what to do. But, and I think we're making strides and we'll get there one day. But I just think there's so much work left to do in educating people. And I think, like I said, it really starts young and at home.
Yeah. I recently did a post for Halloween about my son, Cooper. He came trick-or-treating to his own house, and I actually didn't know that he was even out trick-or-treating with friends. I thought he was with his brothers and sisters, and so I was on candy duty, and I went to the door, and I could see through the window that it was actually Cooper with some friends, and so I grabbed my phone and I started to record it, and just captured a beautiful moment of him with 3 of his friends trick-or-treating and just how fun they were having. It was an awesome moment. And when I posted that, there was comments that were made, and one comment in particular stood out to me, and they said that you can tell that those 3 boys were Cooper's friends. All too often, our kids, in the spirit of inclusion, have fans, meaning that people cheer them on, they encourage them, they want to see them to succeed, but they're not truly a friend. And as you were talking, I agree with that I think we've come a long way, and that these kids have a lot of fans, but not a lot of friends. And truly where the inclusion comes into play is, I think, when that transformation takes place to where these kids are not just accepting of them and encourage them and like to see them and give them a high five, but they truly care about them as a friend. And that's would be my goal in the future, is to
I
get
love that.
more
I have
friends.
the chills from that. That is just, you said it better than I could explain it. That is exactly how I feel. You know, it's wonderful to have support, but I think it's even more meaningful and beautiful to see when someone gets to know your child and really, really gets to know your child.
Yeah, that's right. There's something I'm going to read here that really stood out to me in your preparation, or in our preparation for this. We'd asked you what's one thing you want the world to know about Haley, and you said, "I want the world to know that Haley is non-speaking, but that does not mean she doesn't have anything to say. Get to know Haley, get to know others with different abilities, because everyone has something to share with the world." And you're right. I believe wholeheartedly that all of us, especially those that the world would describe as disabled, have a song that they're meant to sing, a divine purpose, a potential to be able to truly impact the world in a very, very positive way. And I think that Haley's doing that so well because of her amazing mom and dad.
Thank you. The tears, like why? I didn't know there were going to be tears today. I cried too much in that movie. You have to see it.
I am going to watch it now. Yep, for sure, for sure. I would love to visit. In fact, I want to go back to something that you had said. You talked about Noah. So Noah's 7 years old. This isn't like Noah's 15, 16 years old answering questions from his friends about his sister. He's 7.
Right.
And part of me, when I hear that, I just think, that's not fair. Like, no 7-year-old should have to be explaining and defending their little sister that has a disability. And then on the other side of the coin, we could look at that and say, how incredible is that? That someone as young as 7 years old has the intuition, has the empathy, has the intellect to be able to see and recognize that emotional intelligence that is needed to navigate something that is very, very sensitive. How has that been for you as a mom, seeing your son have to navigate through that?
I think a lot of guilt, in a sense, just because I feel like I'm really trying hard to create a space for him where he doesn't feel like and I've heard this term before and I hate this term, but glass child. Like, I don't want him to ever feel like that. I never want him to be called that. But I just want him to also know, like, you know, Haley does have different needs and they're not his responsibility. He is a child. And, you know, we don't expect him one day, like, you have to take care of her. Like, he is not going to be part of that plan. You know, we're her parents, we're his parents. And I think just trying to navigate that, and sometimes I'm like, can you just turn Coco Melon on for her? And I'm like, I hope that's not too much. Like, I hope I'm not asking, you know, and it's a fine line between, he's 7, he's still a baby himself. So, you know, it's a lot. And I think that in ways he's still, you know, trying to figure out life. And I see him sometimes trying to get our attention in maybe not the best way, because he's just trying to kind of figure out what to do. But then I see him so mature, like in different ways, and just the way he explained that, you know, he understands that some questions are nice and some aren't, and that his sister does have differences. And I think just seeing this little boy with such a wise range of emotions and has dealt with things that most kids his age haven't, I think that I'm proud. You know, I mean, there's guilt, but I'm proud because he deals with a lot more than someone his age should really do.
I've witnessed that with my children. We have 2 boys that have Down syndrome, 17 and 12. And honestly, these are the easiest kids anybody could ever raise, and they are life of the party and never cause problems. Like, they are wonderful, wonderful kids. And by and large, their siblings have been very positive about having a sibling with Down syndrome. Actually, most recently, we're talking within the last few weeks, I had my 15-year-old son. In a quiet moment when we were talking, he said, "Dad, sometimes I wish that Nash and Cooper didn't have Down syndrome." And I said, "Talk to me about that, bud. Why?" And he said, "You know, sometimes it's just hard with them being different. And when we go out to places and we go to different areas, it's just hard." And I said, "You're right, bud. Like, I get that." And as a dad, like, I never want my child to have to carry that, and it's not fair that they have to carry that, but it is the reality of the journey, and that's a part of the journey that is difficult for sure.
I think at the end of the day, you know, our kids just carry a different, a weight to them. But I think that their, like you said, emotional intelligence and their empathetic little souls, really, it will serve them in life because they will understand the simple moments and the small moments so differently than, someone else. Because, when we celebrate smaller things, whether it's something Haley does or even Noah does, I mean, like, those are big things. So I think it makes our kids like stop and appreciate life in a totally different way than would they not have.
Yeah. I always use as the litmus test, if you may, that if the journey is uphill, you're on the right path, because progress comes with adversity and with an uphill battle. And, the disability journey, without a doubt, is an uphill battle, but what a beautiful journey it is, and what great scenery we get to see and beautiful vistas that we get to experience in the uphill battle.
That's absolutely true. I remember that poem that everyone sent me when Haley was diagnosed, Welcome to Holland. And while there are parts of that poem that I definitely can connect to, I think that, you kind of picture one way about the way that your life is going to look, and it's boring. Like, who wants that? Like,
Exactly.
it's a beautiful life, and it's ours, and it's a journey, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because then our kids wouldn't be who they are.
That's right. It's this idea of trading the life that we wanted for something better. And that describes our journey for sure. Well, Michelle, this has been incredible. What a beautiful conversation. Thank you again for the work that you're doing. I hope that our paths cross at some point in time. My guess is they will. You're in New Jersey. I'm in that area a fair amount for work, and there just seems to be a reason that our families should get together and become dear friends in that respect. But I appreciate your time on the podcast, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.